matters, more in-depth installation matters pertaining to the installation of the IP20C. Part of the Ceragon installation and commissioning course. The agenda of this module covers the following topics: installation components, multi-core mediation devices, cable installation and grounding, power over Ethernet injector installation and connection, the pole mount installation, configuration scenarios, specifically the following: multi-core 2+0 dual polarization direct mount, multi-core 2+0 dual polarization remote mount, multi-core 2+0 single polarization direct mount, multi-core 2+2 hot standby dual polarization direct mount, multi-core 2+2 hot standby dual polarization remote mount, 2 times multi-core 2+0 single polarization direct mount, 2x2 line of sight MIMO, 4x4 line of sight MIMO direct mount, advanced frequency reuse 1+0, 1+1 hot standby with space diversity, mediation device losses. Some general notes about transportation and site inspection. The equipment should be prepared for public transportation. The cargo must be kept dry during transportation, in accordance with ETS 300-01912, Class 2.3. It is recommended that the equipment be transported to the installation site in its original packing case. If intermediate storage is required, the packed equipment must be stored in a dry and cool environment, and out of direct sunlight, in accordance with ETS 300-01911, Class 1.2. As previously discussed, check that the packing lists and verify that the correct equipment part numbers and their quantities are in the delivered packages. IP20C features an all-outdoor dual-carrier architecture consisting of a single unit directly mounted on the antenna. When dealing with cables connectivity to the unit, note the all connectors are using the same IP68 compliant plastic and rubber gland. A front view of the IP20C reveals the 2 antenna ports, one for each carrier. Carrier 1 sitting below a rear view instead will reveal the TNC source sharing interface, dedicated for MIMO setup, which is the connection between both nodes on the same site, for synchronization of VCO, voltage control oscillator, and reduction of phase noise, and the RSL interface running over BNC connector used for antenna alignment. Finally, a bottom view of the node will reveals, from left to right, the power interface, Ethernet interface 1, which can also serve as PoE, power over Ethernet, Ethernet interface 2 of SFP type, and Ethernet interface 3, which can also be configured as data sharing in case you're using MIMO setup. Finally, we have the management interface running over RJ45 interface. These are the possible installation components that you will find on an installation project. From upper left to lower right side of the screen, you can see the following items: 1. The IP20C network element. 2. A dual-core coupler, used for 2+2 hot standby installations. 3. Next, the OMT, used for combining the vertical and horizontal polarized signals onto the same antenna. 4. A remote single pole mount kit. 5. Next, a remote dual pole mount kit. 6. A dual core splitter, for combining the 2 RF signals from one machine, on the same polarization, to one antenna interface. 7. An adapter for 6 to 13 GHz frequencies. 8. The power over Ethernet injector, in case both data and power are needed, onto the same cable up to the network element of the tower. 9. Is the dual-core mediation device, used in 1+1 hot standby and 2x2 MIMO or space diversity configurations. 10. Is the aluminum twist, used for adjusting the RF signal polarization for every carrier. For the 6 to 11 GHz frequency bands, channels and duplexers are narrow. Thus, a single IP20C unit might have to operate in two channels not covered by the same duplexer, meaning, in this scenario, that two different types of duplexer will be used. As an example, now looking to right graph, one duplexer may cover channel 1 and 2, while the other duplexer might cover channels 3 and 4. This is a list of the antenna connections that IP20C can support. You can see here the list of supported antennas: CommScope VHLP series, RFSSB and SC series, XC-Putin, WTC and WTG series, and Radio Wave are the antenna providers that accommodate the IP20C interfaces. For remote mount installations, the following flexible waveguide flanges should be used in the right side table. These two are the most commonly used dual-core mediation devices for direct mount installation to one antenna: the splitter and the coupler. The dual-core mediation devices are designed to offer a simple and compact solution for a direct mount installation of the multi-core IP20C on a standard RFUC antenna. IP20C is equipped with two antenna ports, which mandates the use of unique mediation devices to facilitate direct mount configurations. These two examples show dual-core mediation devices that enable the connection of a single IP20C unit to an antenna. To the left you have the splitter, which is used to combine two different RF signals from two carriers on different frequencies, but on the same polarization, to a single antenna interface. To the right, you can see the OMT, which is designed to combine two different RF signals from two carriers on both horizontal and vertical polarization, to the same single antenna interface. Let's talk about the cable installation and grounding procedures. When choosing whatever type of cable for IP20C connectivity, the outer diameter of the cable should stay between 6 to 10 millimeters. This applies to all glands on both the IP20C unit and the PoE injector. To fit the grounding clamp, the outer diameter of an Cat5 or Cat6e Ethernet cable must be between 6 to 7.1 millimeters. For sealing cap removal, the fastest and easiest way is to use one gland cover like showed below. The outer shell protuberances fits perfectly into the Phillips-shaped openings of the caps. The pinouts for preparing the MIMO or protection signaling cable. In case you are preparing a MIMO or a protection signaling cable, please use the following pinout, as shown in the diagram in front of you. Other than the pinout connection described above, the cable should be prepared according to the cable preparation procedure described in the next steps. To do the unit grounding, follow these steps. 1. On the front of each IP20C unit, loosen the nut, plain washer, and serrated washer from the ground stud, using the metric offset hexagon key and the wrench. 2. Place the cable lug, supplied with the IP20C grounding kit, in place on the screw. 3. Secure cable lug. 4. The second side of the grounding cable should be connected to the main ground bar or terminal ground bar of the site. 5. Perform a resistance test between the two lugs of the grounding cable. Verify that the result is between 0 to 2 ohms. The unit's grounding screw terminal shall be permanently connected to protective earthing system in a building installation in accordance with applicable national code and regulations by a service person. The user power supply ground must be connected to the positive pole in the IP20C power supply. Any other connection may cause damage to the system. A 2-pole circuit breaker, a branch circuit protector, suitably certified in accordance with applicable national code and regulations, rated maximum 20 amperes, shall be installed for full power disconnection in a building installation. In the case of the IP20C, there is no AF cable to be grounded, only optical and electrical Ethernet cables are involved. Remember that the optical cable does not need grounding as it does not conduct electricity in most cases, unless it involves a metal armor. Ethernet cables are grounded with the use of a special grounding kit. These grounding kits may vary with vendor or client, but they are similar in process. As per the standard, Ethernet cable can be run to a maximum length of 100 meters. Ethernet cable needs grounding near the two ends for distances smaller than 50 meters and grounding near the two ends and once in the middle, for lengths of more than 50 meters. Lightning arresters can also be used to prevent the action of high voltages on Ethernet Cat5 cables. This slide shows how to prepare and connect the Ethernet Cat5 or Cat6 cable. 1. Strip off approximately 45 mm of the outer insulation jacket from the Ethernet cable. 2. Strip off about 15 mm of the inner insulation jacket. 3. Release the gland cap slightly. 4. Insert the Ethernet cable into the cable gland. 5. Insert the Ethernet plug boot facing up into the cable. 6. Roll back the foil shield insulation and wrap the drain wire around the foil. Do not remove any insulation from the conductors. 7. Align the colored wires. Pins should be matched to the same pins on both ends of cable. 8. Trim all wires to the same length. About 12 mm on the left should be exposed from the inner sheath. 9. Insert the wires into the RJ45 plug. Verify that each wire is fully inserted into the front of the RJ45 plug and in the correct order. The sheath of the Ethernet cable should extend into the plug by about 13 mm and held in place by the crimp. 10. Extend the cable jacket with the shield into the connector about 5 mm for strain relief and shielding connection. 11. Crimp the RJ45 plug with the crimp tool. 12. Verify that the wires ended up the correct order and that the wires extend to the front of the RJ45 plug and make good contact with the metal contacts in the RJ45 plug. 13. Push back the Ethernet plug cover on the connector plug. Almost done. Now you just need to. 14. Attach and tighten the gland to the IP20C. 15. Secure cable with tie wrap and check that the cable is not loose in any way before starting other tasks. This slide shows how to prepare the optical fiber cable and adjacent SFP. 1. Use a pre-assembled cable. 2. Split the connector into two separate blue units, one for each wire. 3. Release the gland cap slightly. 4. Insert wires with connector one by one into the cable gland. 5. Connect the wires to the SFP transceiver. Listen for the click sound to ensure that it is fully inserted. 6. Connect the connector into the IP20C plug connector. 7. Insert the gland into the small cover and tighten until This is how to prepare the power cable connection for use. 1. Strip off 45 mm from the cable jacket. 2. Expose 10 mm at the edge of each of the two wires. 3. Insert the power cable into the gland. 4. Insert the power cable wires into the power connector. 5. Match the plus and there to the red and black cord colors according to the power supply connection cord colors. For plus and locations, refer to the figure below. 6. Tighten the two top screws. 7. Plug the power cable with connector into the IP20C power connector. 8. Tighten the two front screws. 9. Securely insert the gland into the IP20C. 10. Secure cable to the gland with a tie wrap. The Power over Ethernet injector installation and connection. First of all, the grounding procedure, explained. 1. On the right side of each PoE injector, loosen the screw, plain washer, and serrated washer. 2. Place the cable lug, supplied with the PoE injector kit between the plain and serrated washer. 3. Tighten the screw. This slide shows you how to mount the Power over Ethernet injector on the wall. Mount and tighten the PoE injector to a wall using two M6 bolts and anchors supplied with the PoE injector package. 1. First, drill two 6 mm diameter holes with 100 mm distance between the center of the holes. 2. Then, insert the anchors with the bolts. 3. Place the washers on the bolt. 4. Lastly, tighten the nuts. Remember these notes. 1. The distance from PoE injector to the switch should be smaller than 10 meters as per the Ethernet standard. 2. The distance from network element to the switch needs to be smaller than 100 meters in total, including the connection done with the PoE injector. If the project requires the PoE injector to be mounted on a pole mount, follow these steps. 1. Mount and tighten the PoE injector to a pole with a diameter of 114 mm using a stainless steel hose clamp. 2. Pass the hose clamp through the pole mount slots. 3. Attach the PoE injector to the pole. 4. Connect the ends of the hose clamp. 5. Tighten the hose clamp using the captive screw. Please note that the hose clamp is not supplied with PoE injector kit. Now, let's look at how to install the PoE injector inside a 19-inch rack, indoors. Please follow these steps to mount the PoE injector on a rack. 1. Mount the PoE injector to a 19-inch rack using a 19-inch rack adapter. 2. Mount the PoE injector on the 19-inch adapter through the wall mounting holes, using M6 screws and washers. 3. Mount the 19-inch rack adapter to a 19-inch rack using 4 M6 screws and cage nuts. To mount the PoE injector to a NETC rack, 1. Mount the PoE injector to a NETC rack using a 19-inch rack adapter and ETC adapting ears. 2. Connect the ETC adapting ears to a 19-inch rack adapter using 4 M6 screws. 3. Mount the PoE injector on the adapter through the wall mounting holes using M6 screws and washers. 4. Mount the 19-inch rack adapter with the ETC ears on the ETC rack using 4 M6 screws and cage nuts. Please note that for this type of installation, a 2-rack unit space is required. As general notes concerning all installation procedures, please note the following. 1. It is important not to remote the transparent films used as pressure windows located on the element's antenna interfaces. This is applicable, as we previously discussed, for the mediation devices as well. Next, for torque requirements, When tightening the captive screws, use 20 Newton-meter torque for radio antenna, radio mediation device, and mediation device antenna connections. In order to avoid misalignment, screws should be tightened progressively. When fastening a waveguide to the radio or mediation device, use the following torque, according to frequency and screw type. For 6 GHz use M5 or 10 to 32 screws with 3.5 Newton-meter of torque applied. For 7 to 15 GHz use M4 or 8 to 32 screws with 2.5 Newton-meter of torque applied. For 16 to 42 GHz use M3 or 4 to 40 screws with 1 Newton-meter of torque applied. The Fiber IP20C can also be ordered hardware tested and certified for ATEX Zone 2 use. ATEX certification means that the product meets the strict criteria and specifications for use in hazardous, explosive environments. For tightening the captive screws, use 20 Newton-meter torque for radio antenna, radio mediation device, and mediation device antenna connections. In order to avoid misalignment, screws should be tightened progressively and diagonally. For fastening the waveguide to the radio or mediation device, use the red marked notes in this slide which shows the required torque, according to frequency and screw type. The IP20C pole mount installation. Each dual-core configuration can be considered as single-core configuration hardware ready for its dual-core counterpart. Therefore, you should follow the same procedure for 2+0 single polarization installation. If you plan to install a 1+0 single polarization hardware ready for 2+0 single polarization, it's important to understand that you should not remove the transparent pressure windows located on the antenna interfaces. To install the IP20C with dual-core pole mount connection, mount and tighten the IP20C dual-core pole mount to a pole with a diameter of 114 mm using the 4 washers and screws supplied with the IP20C dual-core pole mount kit. You can also see here in the slide, a list of the items needed for the installation and the required tools to complete the task. For 6 to 13 GHz only, mount and tighten the IP20C remote mount adapter plate, supplied in IP20C adapter remote mount kit, to the IP20C pole mount using the 4 flat screws supplied with the IP20C adapter remote mount kit. Let's see how to do the remote mount installation for single polarization system. First, for 6 to 13 GHz, 1. Mount and tighten the RFUC adapter plate, supplied in RFUC adaptation kit to flexible waveguide Imperial, to the RFUC remote pole mount using the 4 flat screws supplied with the RFUC adaptation kit to flexible waveguide Imperial. 2. Mount and tighten the IP20C splitter to the RFUC remote pole mount using the 4 captive screws and washers that are assembled to the IP20C splitter kit. 3. Mount and tighten the IP20C radio to the IP20C splitter using the 4 captive screws and washers that are assembled to the IP20C radio. Pay attention that the O-rings are mounted on the IP20C splitter kit. 4. Connect the flexible waveguide and sealing gasket supplied with the flexible waveguide Imperial kit to the RFUC adapter plate. Tighten the 4 screws supplied with the flexible waveguide Imperial kit. Now, let's see how to do the remote mount installation for single polarization system for 15 to 42 GHz. 1. Loosen the 2 screws and remove the twist plate from the IP20C splitter. 2. Mount and tighten the IP20C splitter to the RFUC remote pole mount using the 4 captive screws and washers that are assembled to the IP20C splitter kit. 3. Mount and tighten the IP20C radio to the IP20C splitter using the 4 captive screws and washers that are assembled to the IP20C. Connect the flexible waveguide and sealing O-ring supplied with the flexible waveguide imperial kit to the IP20C splitter kit. Tighten the 4 screws supplied with the RFUC adaptation kit to the flexible waveguide imperial. To obtain the 2+0 dual polarization direct mount with the IP20C, you only need one network element and these tools. Please note the use of the circular adapter to convert the RF signal from 2 carriers on vertical and horizontal polarization to the same antenna. Now, for the actual steps for 2+0 dual polarization direct mount. 1. Prior to the installation, follow the antenna manufacturer's instructions to use the circular adapter. Remove the existing rectangular transition, swap the O-ring, and install the circular transition instead. 2. Connect the OMT kit to the antenna and secure it with 4 screws. Verify the existence of the O-ring. 3. Connect the IP20C dual-core radio to the OMT kit using the 4 M8 captive screws and washers supplied, and tighten the screws. If we speak about the 2+0 dual polarization in remote mount, we need to add a number of elements, as showed in the table above. The tools required are the same with the added exception of showing the insertion losses. For this method of installation, there is a common part and some differences depending on the frequency. First, let's speak about the common part for both categories of frequencies. 1. Prior to the installation, follow the antenna manufacturer's instructions to use the circular adapter. Remove the existing rectangular transition, swap the O-ring, and install the circular transition instead. 2. Connect the OMT kit to the antenna and secure it with 4 screws. Verify the existence of the O-ring. 3. Mount and tighten the O-ring and the flexible waveguide to IP20C OMT ports using the 4 screws supplied with the flexible waveguide kit. Now the uncommon steps for 6 to 13 GHz. 4. Mount and tighten the IP20C remote mount adapter plate, supplied in IP20C adapt remote mount kit, to the IP20C pole mount using the 4 flat screws supplied with the IP20C adapt remote mount kit. 5. Mount and tighten the IP20C radio to the IP20C pole mount using the 4 captive screws and washers that are supplied with the IP20C radio. Pay attention that the O-rings are mounted on the IP20C remote mount adapter. 6. Mount and tighten both flexible waveguides with their O-ring to the IP20C remote mount adapter ports using the 4 screws supplied with each flexible waveguide kit. Now, the uncommon steps for 15 to 42 GHz. 4. Mount and tighten the IP20C to the IP20C dual-core pole mount using the 4 screws assembled on the IP20C. 5. Mount and tighten the O-ring and the flexible waveguide to IP20C radio ports using the 4 screws supplied with the flexible waveguide kit. How to obtain 2+0 single polarization in direct mount installation. 1. First, you need to adjust the twist on the splitter kit. Perform one of the following steps, according to the required polarization, horizontal or vertical. A. For horizontal polarization, locate the holes above and below the letter H on the pins and fasten the 2 screws. B. For vertical polarization, locate the holes above and below the letter V on the pins and fasten the 2 screws. 2. Next, mount and tighten the IP20C splitter kit on the antenna using the 4 M8 screws and washers. 3. Mount and tighten the IP20C to the IP20C splitter kit using the 4 M8 captive screws and washers supplied. Next, let's speak about the 2+0 single polarization remote mount installation. These are the tools needed for the installation and the insertion loss per each frequency category.